Okay, this should be working. Because sound testing before the stream is... Morning, Mr. Jones. Happy birthday. How is it going? Oh, man. I made breakfast, so that's why I was running late this morning. I decided to do it out on the griddle outside, and it's kind of a rush. Yeah. Okay. This. So I have spent the last couple of days, well, rather the last 2 weeks, I suppose, I spent trying to focus on getting around to the notifications, get the changes working, and then realize, double look, and back in a bit later. No worries. Thank you very much for the look. I appreciate that. I've spent the last couple of weeks trying to build out the application to support multiple users so that I can get notifications, so that I can kind of get that vision of this unified communication system working. And I think I'm getting there. Right. I think I'm starting to understand how things kind of work. I'm trying to figure out how to diagram and draw this appropriately because it's there's a lot of moving parts at this point, but it seems to be coming together. This is the part I want to focus on for the next foreseeable future. Primarily because I think it's a very important component. I think it's going to be a very difficult component. Trying to kind of show the flow through the system. The problem is it's not bidirectional, right? Because technically GraphQL exists in here, which feeds information back here, and that's the cycle. I don't know quite how to draw that properly. So over the course of the next few months, I'm hoping that I can get a bit better at diagramming. Yesterday evening, I spent some time doing something that I felt was worthwhile, and that was putting everything behind the gateway, including GraphQL. So now the gateway is the entry point for the application, and it's the gateway. That's exactly what it's meant to be. But now GraphQL requests go through there, API requests go through there, everything gets routed through there, and I started looking into what would it take to support multiple GraphQL endpoints. We oftentimes think, and this is from past experience, I was reflecting back on what I've done before here. And oftentimes the assumption is that you have to have an API and the API has to solve all the problems. An API gateway opens up a new world, a new possibility, right, to solve problems, whether it be versioning. I kind of had this, I jumped in with this bit of conversation yesterday. If you had the need to create a new version of your API and you wanted to deprecate the old one, you could put them both behind API gateways and run them as separate projects and wind down the old one until it was the only way of doing things, and then deprecate those APIs peacefully without impacting the code. API versioning is a challenge that I will leave for later on. Right. But we do kind of build the software around one API, and you kind of think of it as like the way of doing it, and that's what's been refreshing about this so far. In that I've had these different APIs, I've used the API gateway, and now this is actually true, right? So all the queries come through the gateway. And in my GraphQL provider now, I have cleaned this up a little bit. I have named options, and I'll go into named options in a minute. And then I have this with WS security. So there's two pieces to the GraphQL API I'm using, and that's using not only oh, that's why that doesn't work. Because that replaces HTTP with WS, and then replaces I probably need to make that a bit more robust. That might be why that's failing. I'll check in a second. But yeah, this piece attaches the bearer token to the WebSocket connection, and that's what this is meant to do. So if I have a definition of a subscription definition, then it will attach. Otherwise, it'll use this. So this was working previously to give me the WebSocket subscriptions, but it's allowed me to clean up the code thinking about it. But what this GraphQL provider now does is I can actually now have communications as a completely different endpoint, right? So I could actually change this up a little bit here. I can move this here, and now I don't need WebSocket security there. I can do HTTP link .create, and then this is the same URL, but I can use communications GraphQL, right? So I can build different URLs now. I gotta refresh myself on this. So that's why I'm thinking about using that, because then through the API gateway, I can send multiple GraphQL requests, and to my system, I just need to name that provider, and now it'll go to a completely different endpoint. So I can break up the system in a really flexible way without the client having to care. So the client just sees one API and just has different routes, and then yeah. And I also moved to using the environments. Client ID is not going to break anything. So now the configuration of the application is environment driven. So if I do a production build or do a development build, I don't have to worry about hard coded values in here. I don't have to worry about the URL. All this starts to allow me to flex this a little bit more. So some good solid changes on the client side, which give me a little bit more flexibility. And actually, let's do, that's not going to do what I think it's going to do, is it? So if I do console and I do URI equals https :test.com, and then I do URI dot replace http :ws dot replace https dot wss. Okay, that does work. Huh. That's impressive. So how does that work? It doesn't do the replacements serially. It evaluates which one it matches. Ah, okay. Well, then I'm comfortable that works then. I had a WebSocket issue last night that I'm not sure I necessarily fixed. So yeah, I start up this now with development, and that'll put in development mode, and that will allow me to configure it. So some really solid changes to the application. I've merged that into development branch. That's all good. So Okay. But it does leave me with that moment of, oh, now I've got to do the hard part. Now I've got to do the part I've been kind of putting off because this is the biggest piece of design that I'm going to have to work on. There's a lot of code, there's a lot of pieces. But now I've got to figure out what this actually means and what this means and how they relate to each other and how I feed the changes. I've got to consider what that design looks like to make this work. And where do I need to focus? Do I need to focus on the client side? Do I need to focus on I think the server side, obviously, is the most important part. But yeah, how do I achieve that? How do I get this working? Hello, buddy. Hello. So the goal over the next period of time, I say period of time because it really is going to take a while, is basically when I make a change to one of these things, I need another person who's currently sat in their dashboard here, or, if I put the alert tray back in there, to be able to get an indicator to say, you've got something changed on something you care about. I also need to be able to configure that thing, right? It's not just a notification. It's what do I care about? How do I flex that? And I think what I'm going to end up with is some sort of definition file that's going to define the things that are available to select, because I don't think there's no point being dynamic over that piece. I might as well configure that part, because then I could potentially control rollout of features. So if I want to provide the ability to alert on something, but the parts aren't all there yet, I could actually omit it from definitions and stuff. So I don't think I need to be clever about this part and do any of this dynamically. I think a lot of this is going to be hand coded, or hand coded definitions of, okay, well, you want to look for planning items. What does this look like? So ideas, notifications. So I kind of have gone through into this. There's two different types of notification, realistically. There's email and in client. So an email notification is one, as it suggests, that it's sent to your email. If you think about the flow there, that has a different path, in that once the thing has been determined to be notified upon, it will transmit that to you. There's no need to send that down to the UI. In client notifications, need to be pushed to the client and determined. So the way I think I'm going to do that is actually through an inbox. And I think I'll do that by, and this is why I've explored the GraphQL piece as I have, because I think if I put everything in view, it runs the risk of being like, view is, I'll put it, a little bit too generic, a little bit too big. Maybe. But communications or notifications, which I want to decide to do it through, I can't, I'm still yet to determine the difference between notification and communication, and whether notifications needs to be its own thing. Like, to me, telling the client something happens is a form of communication. A notification is a kind of communication, right? So I could eradicate this entirely and remove that complexity. maybe that's what we think about. So what does changes mean? Changes is there's two sides to changes. Um, there's monitoring and there's live changes, right? Because there's, hey, this thing changed, and there's the, hey, this thing didn't change aspect of it. Um, so yeah. Um, go and set something up, I think. Been a while. Um, um, okay. So, if anyone has any thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing here, or has any like questions, I want to be able to make sure that that I'm discussing this out loud because I'm actually open to the ideas. And I'm not trying to say that I can't think of the ideas. I'm just saying like this sort of stuff is best not done in a vacuum, right? This is a sort of software design that building this in a vacuum is not helpful. Um, because I'm just going to confirm my own ideas. Um, I'm trying to set up some timers because I think mm, yeah. Gonna try that for a while. Okay. So yeah, the changes piece feeds out right now feeds out of tenant management, but it will come out of actually it will come out of there, not there, right? That comes out more there. Um, Now the question is, where does that go, right? But does that go to communications? It doesn't seem like it's. Uh, Maybe that actually goes to both. So if communications is the one that deals with figuring out who needs to care, view captures what changed about an object, right? So let's have a look. And I am starting to think I'm probably going to need to make sure that I wrap who changed something in some way, shape, or form. So right now, changes looks like this. It says with great confidence. It's confident everything's up and running fine. Yeah, it's fine. So changes looks like this. Open by an editor. Oh, that's the last event. The outbox is the better example of the changes. So we're saying, okay, well, the changes were the description changed. Hey, Delta, how you doing? Good morning. The before was this, the after was this, right? So it changed from this to this. I don't know who did this. I probably should figure that out before I go too deep on changes. I probably need some way of figuring out context. Went extra hard at the gym. Guess I'll see how sore I get. Just make sure you drink plenty of water. Your muscles will recover better. Drinking coffee, close enough. No, the caffeine will dehydrate you. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure caffeine is a what's the word? Let's see if I'm. Is it a myth or is it an actual truth? It has diuretic properties that flushes out your body's fluid. Coffee is made mostly of water and likely not dehydrate you on its own. You know, that's where it comes from. Diuretics. I'd still drink water. Um, well, it is true that it has diuretics in it. It's just the fact that it contains water. If your coffee's strong though, your balance is still wrong. So I guess that's why I looked it up rather than just outright say it. Um, Dehydration is unlikely unless you're chronically overcaffeinated and not getting enough water in other ways. Yeah. Because coffee is a natural diuretic, which helps draw salt and water out of your kidneys. That's why. Yeah. But no, I when I first started karate, I went really hard and didn't drink any water. And the day after, I couldn't lift my arms. And they're like, if you want to get rid of the muscle pains quicker, just make sure you're hydrated. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Um, right. So I've got to figure out this. I've got to figure out who did something, right? So it's good enough to know the changes, but who did the thing? So I need a way, and this is where this is going to get very challenging because of the disconnected nature of this, right? I need a way of identifying who did something. So my thought here is what I need is an updated by ID on the table. This is going to be a massive of refactoring. This is going to be huge. Oh well. So right now, let's have a look. You know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a PR against main. Main, this is in a good place right now. So I've got the main, yeah, 920 files. I've done a lot since I last did it. since I last changed it. So let's go create pull request. A lot of changes have happened. Stable development branch. No, let's just do that. I don't need to clarify that any further. It's just a good place to finally merge. And that doesn't need any confirmation because I'm the only one that's allowed to merge it to main. There you go. Okay, so main had recent pushes. Interesting. That's interesting that it wants to merge that pull request back into development because that wouldn't create sort of a weird loop. Anyway, yeah. Development's my default anyway. So what I need to do here is not easy, but it will support a better future. So here, this record changed. I don't know who did it, and I won't know who did it. Oh, dog left me. Okay. So if we look at this, the way the application works is when I go and add a planning item, I know who created it. I know who assigned it, right? So in this instance, I do know enough information. So let's go to the create. The create triggers a domain event, right? That domain event doesn't know who did it. So what I need to do is add on to here. How do I do this now? Required. Can I do required on an interface? Let's learn. GUID. Source. User ID. You can't do required there. What I'm thinking of doing is let's describe the problem. Let's describe the problem properly. I have lots of windows open. Telling users what happened. As a changes consumer, I need to know who made a change. The current changes do not indicate who changed an item in order to this. Integration events should be published. The identifier of the user who caused change, triggered the change. And this is where I'm going to get technical on something that I really shouldn't do, but it's more for my thought path here. The domain events don't carry who did something by default. And the weird thing here is this seems like a counter intuitive change to make, but I don't see any other way of doing it because I can't. It's not like I can wrap some sort of context around the changes, right? And kind of use like an AOP style to inject the executing user, which would be good. But I don't carry that information unless I do. let's just this is not Godot. Hey Dan, how you doing? No, this is not Godot right now. This is I hit a point on my application that I really, really need to focus. I can't concentrate on game dev. So for right now, I'm gonna back burner some game devs. As much as I'd like to continue on, now he's retired from game dev. Um, not permanently, not permanent. I'd like to get back to that because it is fun. It is fun, but the problem is I have to put my energy and focus into this platform if I want to make something of it. And I'm not going to do that if I keep, because I've hit a point where I'm excited to do it. I've got a lot of things that are starting to come together. And if I divert onto game dev for 2 days a week and my brain is on this, the game dev is not going to be very interesting, right? So, because I'm not going to really care about what I'm doing. While my brain's worrying on eventing and stuff like that. Mojo, good morning. So, but right now we'll suspend it and then get back later. Adulting. I mean, if I'm honest, this is what I'm good at. Game dev, I'm never going to be good. Um, that will always be something that I enjoy tinkering with and trying to build out of, but something I'm not inspired enough to make. This fascinates me. Like this world fascinates me as far as my programming career goes. Oh, little one. Okay. What I'm wondering about is if, because all these are executed through the pipeline. Need to do a prototype. Why you changed? No reason for change. Okay. So if you branch, so I started off the stream. I was kind of describing what I figured out yesterday was how to put everything in the API in the client layer behind configuration. So now my entire app is environment driven, so I don't have to have hard coded values here. They're in an environment file, and that environment file has everything I need, including the API URL. So now my services can just use the environment URL. I don't have that hard coded in every file. I also figured out how to get GraphQL to have named options. So now this will be the default version, but I can actually create different GraphQL endpoints. So I could actually create an entirely different GraphQL API and have the app go to it and or go through the gateway because everything's based off that API URL. Everything goes through the gateway and gets converted properly, which does mean that now I really kind of flex this and I don't have to just have the view being my only query source. I could actually have communications, have a GraphQL API, and interact with the client through there. So that was a aha moment, which opened up my mind to some new possibilities. So let's do spike, include user context. So what I'm looking to see here is can I include in a behavior pipeline of How would I do that? Um, so what I'm looking to do is if I can make it so that the handling current user, the mediator piece understands who's executing it, then I can inject the user identifier of any user making a change and make it transparent so you can't miss it. My alternative is when I do things like create's a little easier, but it means I also have to set planning item created. This domain event has to have um, GUID um, user identifier, right? Which is the user who created the change. And it means I have to pass that down every single method. Whereas I'm executing it in the context of somebody. Should I not just be able to infer that? Therefore attach it, because ultimately what I'm looking to do here is I'm looking to say when I go to publish this planning item, etc., that this has like a planning item integration event has public GUID source user ID identifier, right? And it's nullable because sometimes you just wouldn't have that information, so you could infer that the system did it. But that's ultimately what I'm trying to set. Actually, that would be GUID source user identifier equals that'd be right. So that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. Where if I have this information, I can specify it. So can I pull that from context? So the way that's going to work is this event, this not the event publisher, subscribers, planning item created. This integration event is an actual a mediator notification handler. It doesn't come with extra context. That's the problem. Ah, I'm sure that should have fired by now. I tried to re-enable Streamlabs to try and get some cycled messages in the stream. Yeah, I want to kind of ask if you're in the stream and you are interested in what I'm doing. Is there anything I could do to make this easier to digest on entering the stream? Is there anything I could do to make this a little simpler to kind of follow along with? I know what I'm doing is quite big and involved without, I don't want it to look intimidating, I suppose, even though it kind of is by its nature. What it is. Everything's mediator. Vim. Okay, I got it. Hi, Sally. How you doing? Yes, we'll break out Vim. Things will get much easier. Because I know a lot of the patterns and the things I do aren't necessarily very simple to comprehend. Not necessarily patterns, even just the structuring and the things I'm doing right now. This is a kind of crazy mess. Dogs. I'm procrastinating because I'm trying to think about what I need to do here. Where do I use pipeline behaviors? I have some pipelines, I think, already. Uh, extensions, entity, repositories, interceptors, workflows. That shouldn't be there. That should be something. Here we go. So this is an example of a pipeline behavior in Mediator. So what this sets up is, okay, well, I want to, before you get into a handler, I want to inject context. But the problem here is, actually, let's just do it. Let's just do this. 3D processors. I mean, TDD is such a beast to tackle. I'm always hesitant to introduce it to people as a result. I think my problem with TDD is I know that some of the practices I follow aren't great. I know that some of them would probably not fit with other people's idea of TDD. But I feel it's productive. And I think I can learn and grow into it if I'm shown new ways or new techniques, or, I can comprehend new ways of doing it. And TDD, it's a hard thing to do when you're used to just sitting down and writing code. If you're used to sitting down and saying, okay, I have a problem, let me write the code for it and kind of figure it out. If you're used to sitting down and thinking, how do I have a problem, how do I solve it, and figuring out the solution before you write the code, or kind of coming up with that, then it's a little bit more difficult to think about TDD, because TDD is more, I have a general challenge, make it up as I go and write the code as I go. That's what true TDD is. It's using the code to explore the code that you need to write and ending up hopefully with the right solution that you've validated solves the problems you have. Right. If you are, this is where developers often fail, is because they get the idea of a piece of code and they come up with all these assumptions about how it should work, and that's what they build to. Like our project is TDD because I'm writing a bunch of domain problems. Right. I mean, would you consider this easy to TDD? Yeah. Morning trap, by the way. Yeah. Don't know how to write good code, good tests. I think that's where I don't think I write great tests. I think I write useful tests. I think I know enough to learn when someone knows more about TDD, if they're willing to sit down and walk through why what I do is in any way incorrect or doesn't quite, because I think my TDD, when I'm doing it, meets the needs. I've done some of it TDD. Yeah. PHP unit testing is not a fun time. I've done some TDD, some after the fact tests, etc. So I've got a blend in here. Some of them I've deliberately skipped over for the sake of the stream. So I've been lax on the discipline with it, but I haven't necessarily dropped it entirely. So what I'm thinking of doing here, let me see. Um, User context. Like, getting to work. Delta, have a great day at work. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I don't know how common it is, but the pattern of injecting mocks and counting calls and checking outputs of calls inside of the functions turns one's code into a fragile mess. Yeah, I can see that. Mocks, I don't like. Everything can lead to a bad time when done wrong. Um, mocks, mocks I use. Um, Sometimes just understanding what it is you want to validate, and there's some parts of this that I can't easily unit test, and that's and I've got to figure out. I got to kind of take a look at Ardali's stuff because validating the specs, you kind of just done if you send me one of these, I'll expect it's true. Um, that's hard. Um, a good mock is merely a different implementation of an API. Okay. Why faking it? And for the purpose of discussion, this is where this gets messy with unit testing. Faking versus mocking versus stubs, and goodness knows what else. That's probably good enough right now. There's probably, yeah, faster tests, integration test, don't bleed over. I don't know if that's, yeah, okay. The dog came in with a squeaky toy. Um, if yesterday's code, it was as intended, but somewhere along the way, I chose to do too much. I think it's just the planning and then executing aspect that I get lost in. That's often the challenge, right? And that's why sometimes unit tests, people don't like writing unit tests, because they kind of figured out what they want to do in the code, and that's what they write. The reality is, and it's interesting that aha moment you get the first time you actually hit it, where you're writing a unit test and you realize, oh, I don't actually need to do that, and you see the simplicity in um, what your final solution might be way more simple and clear than the actual solution you thought you had come up with beforehand. And developers get lost in trying to fit the unit test to what their expectation of the code is rather than fitting the unit test to the exploration. Um, so yeah. So to me, if I'm writing integration tests, I'm maybe I don't mind using mocks for unit tests. I can see where fakes, etc., become more useful for integration tests, but I'm considering them two different things entirely. I mean, I know the beginning, middle, and end for these, but I don't know how to keep it simple. Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you just need to explore the code, and I don't think adding unit tests and on top of all that sort of stuff is going to necessarily make it much more. It's not going to change that. Those descriptions are distinctions without differences. Kind of briefly read over them. Fake objects actually have working implementations, but usually take some shortcut, which makes them not suitable for production. Stubs provide canned answers to calls made during the test, usually not responding at all to anything outside of what's programmed in for the test. Stubs may also record information about calls, such as an email gateway stub that remembers the message it's sent. Okay, I've done more. I've created stubs and called them fakes. Mocks are what you're talking about here. Objects pre-programmed with expectations, which form a specification of the calls they're expected to receive. So we acquire or build a very lightweight implementation of the same functionality as provided by a component. The problem I find with doing fakes and stubs or whatever you think, spies, etc., is that you've got to be careful you don't build too much into them, because then they become code that really has to be maintained themselves. And if another developer goes in and changes the behavior or whatever, so that's why I'm not necessarily a big fan of just going straight to fakes and stuff, because they are, in my opinion at least, they can become fragile if someone else doesn't understand how they used or believes they can just make some other behavior testable by adding some stuff in. And then you end up with your test breaking because your fake doesn't perform the same way or something. At the end of the day, you provide alternative implementations and some interface to accomplish your goal of testing. Yeah. They all solve the same problem with, yeah. The reason I like mocks is because normally I shouldn't be I shouldn't be mocking more than one or two things. Uh, the spying that you can see what the state was, you mean? Good afternoon, Rambling Geek. How are you doing? Okay. Anyway, this is not moving me forward. I'd say read Mojo. I'd say best advice: do some reading on TDD, maybe follow some katas or whatever. But I wouldn't necessarily try and make everything you do in TDD right now grow into it a little bit before you actually start trying to tackle it. Test around the fate to ensure it behaves the same as the real thing seemed like a good idea. It seems unnecessary. You're testing your fakes. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So what I've stopped myself from doing there was trying to create something way more complicated than needed to be. Is it unreasonable for me to expect a behavior in the system to know who committed it, right? Is it I'm kind of thinking too far ahead, and I'm thinking about what if. That's when this gets dangerous, right? Because I'm trying to develop clever code to solve a problem, because what if something else comes along? What if another developer comes along and they don't pass the user identifier down? What if, right? I can make it a little simpler. right? Um, it looks like I've considered this before, right? I just haven't used it. Um, yeah, that's impressive. So again, the concern here is right. This created by user identifier. I'll try. What I didn't like was that the few videos I was watching were installing mock and fluent before starting. One guy wrote his code, then added testing on his TDD tutorial. I mean, we could take some time off stream to go through some basic examples. Um, I generally start. So um, I'm one of those people that saw the behavior of the person who developed mock and decided no. I don't like installing Fluent because I don't like writing should in my tests. Um, I have a fundamental or mental block on should. Like I'm not guessing. It either does or it doesn't. I don't want to write should, and Fluent is all about the should. I don't know. I know that's the terminology that a lot of tests follow. Um, but they're common pieces that people use to describe the system. So I'll often install and substitute because I'm using mock. Um, the idea of a unit test is that you are testing a component of your code, and any dependencies that code has should be controllable, right? If you find yourself injecting implementations of things, solid implementations of things into your classes, that's generally an indicator that you're going to have a challenge unit testing it, right? Because you have to build the chain of you have to build the dependency chain to be able to create an instance of your system, your subject. Um, yeah, if you can control the inputs, you can understand the outputs. Is kind of the basics, or the side effects. Like if I call create user, this is where I try to hold to that that phrase of your story. You're writing the story, right? And unit tests help describe the story because they help tell the story as it should be. And if you're looking at unit tests from a with a PM or something, you should be able to describe, okay, when we create a user, this is what happens. When we create a widget, this is what happens, right? The test outline the behaviors of the system that someone might care about. If you're injecting things, it no longer is black box, unless of course it takes a callback. Yeah, there's the caveats, right? Um, hello, dog. So yeah, no dependencies, um, well dependencies, but no dependency injection or controllable dependencies, and understanding how you're using something. So anyway, if I go this path, what I'm doing here is essentially going to do um, command with user, which might be command from user, result period. Um, but that means that has to take, ah, that's why that's useful then. Okay. wonder if I can term that a little bit differently. Because what I'm doing there is I'm making my command, I'm describing my command as being the one responsible for telling me who did it. And now I'm just kind of flipping it. And I don't necessarily want to call that created by user identifier anymore. For some reason, that feels incorrect. But the design here feels incorrect as well. So, period source user identifier. Right. And if we do that, command from user result of period, and it takes source user identifier. Let me know. That's why I did that. I moved the nullables down to the bottom. Like in this instance, I have enough information, right? Now my domain event, I think I end up with public class domain event period source user identifier. I don't remember I can do that. That's not a shared contract anymore. Move to folder. Commands. Not the same thing. It's not feeling as clean as I want it to feel, but I'm going to proceed. That's the point of the it is the point of the exercise. So what I do there is make that inherit the main event, which now means I have to have and they're in the same. It's not like I'm missing. I'm including the extra libraries. I don't need. Just need shared events, and this would need source user identifier, which means that this needs source user identifier. This is why I'm a little bit hesitant to do it. That can still be a record. Interesting. And now that can be created by user identifier. I'm breaking a lot of tests, by the way, but there's no. Yeah. But I'm exploring how this feels. So having the interface means I have to have the user identifier, which means I can't not pass it down. Having the interface means I have that in the command, so I have a source user identifier on my command, or having the abstraction, not the interface. It's not an interface. I'd be interested to know if anyone has any other. How would you tackle this? Right. Oh, that's the problem. CloudBot activate. I need to do that as well. Let's see. Give Streamlabs another chance. I can't do it with some sort of AOP because that was kind of my idea with the behaviors. Is maybe maybe I could kind of make it a contextual thing, but the problem is when I'm publishing these events, if I don't know who did something, like if it could be triggered from somewhere else, or again the domain events get published, those domain events get consumed outside of that context. They're serialized and then re, uh, re reconstituted because they're put into outbots. So I would have no context on the other side because that the process that picks them up isn't the same process that the user had. So I don't necessarily see any other way of doing this. But I'm wondering if I'm kind of like more focused on getting to the solution than I am thinking about other options. Or I'm overthinking it. And this is actually more than acceptable. Because again, this becomes command from user, GUID, source, user identifier, source, user identifier. And then this just needs GUID, source, user identifier. But now that breaks the planning endpoint because now this has to do this, we have to now go user dot get user identifier, right? Is that, I think that's acceptable. It feels like that's acceptable. It's just a simple rule. If it has to have, if we know we need to track it. Now the mess becomes here because this update planning item this update planning item now needs GUID source user identifier, right? So there's a knock-on effect right down the path because we need GUID source. And now, yeah, these all need that. That doesn't feel like a good pattern anymore because that would need them to all have that. Because I couldn't know which one was going to change it. So these methods now all get that. And planning item updated needs a GUID. Right? It's kind of redundant, but it's fine. And now this needs that. I mean, I'm not I'm not opposed to it. It just dogs. If it can be found and chewed, it will be found and chewed. Not even sure what that's from. Um, I don't know. Is there a cleaner way? Is there a better way of doing this? So add requirement. That now takes that. Oh, command. Update planning item now takes command dot source user identifier. Add planning item. Associate projects now takes command dot source user identifier. So all these different methods now. It's a cascade. Here, this has to be a command from user period. Period source user identifier. Like, it's not necessarily hard to do. It's just, is it intuitive? Is it? Oh, in that case, no, I don't need to add the extra thing there. I don't need source because I've got that's good enough. Right, so some of these are good enough because they actually do trigger, but again, the planning item updated doesn't know who did it, right? So maybe this is good. Maybe this works. Maybe there's some ways I can write the commands that mean that the readability improves. Because again, and Mojo, you kind of raised this yesterday in terms of like when a developer's gone off and written the code, it makes sense to them. Does it make sense to other people? And I'm not expecting anyone who's watching the stream to like, I don't like how you did this in this line because, there's a lot of code here. There's a lot of different pieces and no one's paying that much attention to every single line of code I write. Those tests I broke. So concerning planning item creating notification, when a notification is received, planning item created. So this is the actual So the reason I broke the code and didn't change the tests is because I wanted to see which tests were affected. So once I'd started the path, I was like, you know what, I'm going to commit to this, and now I can validate whether now I can validate whether I need to have explicit cases here for these things. Notifications received. So concerning planning item created notification. So this is because I need a source user identifier on the planning item created event. So this needs private real period. That's that. And then I'm expecting that I publish that. Arg is expected planning identifier, planning item integration event. Um, source user identifier. That'll work. That'll break that even further. It should do. And next step, source user identifier equals expected. So when I'm unit testing, I'm often questioning the validity in doing that. What I could do is write a bunch of tests that are, because again, I could capture the event. I could capture the event and then say, okay, well, the source was set, the identifier was set, the title was set, the description was set, the review date was set, created by user identifier was set, assigned user identifier. Because right now, this event actually does have enough information as to who did it. Which would be a justification someone might use for not putting source user identifier on that event. No. No. Dog wants to play. Because yeah, technically this does have who created it. Do I have local changes? I'm in planning items, DBO tables, planning items. Yeah, I have the created by. So that will always be in the first message. This will always be who created it, but then so the first message, this and this will match, but every subsequent message won't match. So that's what I need to make sure I'm testing as well. So I'm always curious as to how different people would approach this test design, because I've done it both ways, and the other way is messier from the gathering perspective. Also, I do the weird thing with the arrange act, so yeah. Okay, so I need to have on when notification is received, an item not available, argument null exception is thrown. Hey Rajat, how you doing? Welcome in. Good. You good? This doesn't matter. We're just validating that if the planning item doesn't exist. Right. So this is just saying, hey, whatever. It doesn't matter what this data is. This is going to throw an exception. I think I'm at the point where this is probably the path I'm going to head down. Rename feature, include source user. Get rid of the day. CR on Mojo. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. Appreciate it. Have a great day. So we're going to just rename this to a feature. Let's try this again. Let's go back and reflect on that a little bit more. I need to know who made a change. So this is going to include update commands. Again, I'm checking the technical concerns because I'm just trying to think about it. Update the main events. Update integration events. That's going to have a knock-on effect as well because that's going to change changes. So this is going to be challenging. T88. So let's go back to our branch. If you're new to the stream, I'm building a large application for project management, work tracking, tickets, etc. If you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in. I'm happy to divert and talk about the software or answer questions. So feel free. Okay, so concerning planning item updated when no planning item did not receive update planning item. Arg update planning item model arg dot any GUID. Any GUID. So here I'm just validating that the call to that method was not made. So our planning item command requires a source user identifier, right? I generally try to make sure I have all the variables set up at the top so I don't end up so that you can always go up and look at the other variables in context. And I'm not using assigned here, so the current doesn't make much sense there. And if we're being realistic, that should be arg is. Right? We should not see a call with that source user identifier. When the planning item is not found, again, this doesn't matter here. Yeah. I should get into this habit because the tooling is giving me that, not the not the yeah, that's probably cleaner. From a readability perspective, that's probably cleaner. And this is going to be a big commit. Probably should not. Okay, expected user assign, expected private read only, GUID, source user identifier. Oh, it goes there, there. It's not part of the. It's not part of the update. I'm actually tracking it as because I'm using it as a domain service. So we're a little bit away from. Yeah, so that won't work. User assign is changed. Private read on period. This is making those calls and validating that the um, uh, making sure that one field at a time gets changed and that they're calling the right thing. So we're validating that the update happened. And I'm kind of doing that in account. Come back around on that testing. Private read on period. Source user identifier. Paste that on there and cancellation. I shouldn't be missing parameters like that. I know it's defaulted, but it's fine. That's the sort of thing that I should be doing here. I mean, that's the bare minimum. The count is count thing is wrong. Planning item assigned does not have. That's actually one of those things that is probably one of the more useful ones in that I need to know who assigned it to me. So that's definitely an argument unto itself why that should be done. Let's go down and fix the actual code. So planning item, and again, every single one of these is going to need. Yeah. Like to me, it feels like there should be a wrapper around this, like that understands the context of the user, and then when I perform actions, it knows this is the current user executing it. Apply this on top, but it's just not that simple. There's not enough pieces. I don't always know that many HTTP layers, so I don't know that if I've got a GUI a user, so I have to trust that I'm going to pass down the user ID. So this could break other things. Right now, I'm willing to. wanted to tinker with this. We shall learn. We shall learn. So I think that's there, right? Yeah, sausage red in fire. And this will take publish planning item. Ah, need to modify that. Until I know better, that's staying in there. Source identifier. And again, a lot of this is because I need these events to come through as the right things. So that's going to be, it's going to be notification dot source user identifier. So I apologize if I'm skipping around. Just notification dot source user identifier. Okay. Private. This does mean that I have to realistically wipe out everything I've got. Um, um, I was really bad at that, just relying upon the fact that it doesn't need. I want to be again. I want to be explicit, and I know I've got a default on there. Maybe that's part of the problem, but I want to be clear that there's a cancellation token in there. Private read only, and there's. I'm not trying to run the tests, right? I realize that the test could be the fact that I'm adding code to the test, but not adding any extra tests is probably well, it's probably a flag. I should be doing that one. I should at least be validating that the source user identifier is being passed through, right? The bare minimum. That's what I should be doing because that now means that it passes that into the item updated event. See that one, I did it. I added the I added the piece in there. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so concerning planning item updated. Let's add private read only period source user identifier. Where's this AI? So here, actually, what I'm testing the subject is actually the planning item because I actually want to test the behavior of the planning item. When I call the method, I want to validate that it's not just that the event's triggered; it's that I'm passing that the right things get calculated, etc. So yeah, private period, source, user identifier, then so I'm validating, okay, well, if I pass in empty, it actually calculates as empty and removes things and makes the changes to the object. So there's a little bit of behavior in there as to how it's doing things. So, okay. So we should have a building application. No, we don't. Internal. Uh-oh. Um, this is actually going to go away. So this path right this second is when if you're creating a ticket. So I focused initially on creating tickets and kind of getting the workflow in, and then decided to try chase a vertical rather than a complete horizontal. So initially I was going to go from tickets to planning items to stories. And what I decided was to go to planning items because that's kind of the focus of my IRA, whatever, and purely focus on planning items. Tickets is still a concept I am going to attack, but I don't need tickets for this. So this just needs planning item dot. I don't think I don't have because there's no notification here. Yeah. So this is created by that meets that need. It's not. It is a created event anyway, so it's producing a planning item from that. So the fact that the ticket was created, promoted by create ticket from details, promoted by planning item created by user identifier, promoted by okay. So I use that identifier in it. So yeah, it does come in there. But ultimately that's going to go away anyway, so it's not going to be much use. Let's see if the app builds. See if we can get back to building before the end of the stream. And yeah, if you're new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, please feel free to ask. This application has been going for 10 months. There is no argument that contains. So, where did I miss the red squiggles there? Does anybody else see the planning item as associated projects? Infrastructure consumers. View infrastructure. Oh, there we go. What I'm validating here is the actual other side where I am dealing with. I mean, changes. I probably don't have enough changes tests. I'm validating. I have a real period. That's going to be. It's going to be. It's going to be. user integration event. That doesn't include that, does it? So what's this one crying about? That one wasn't crying. That's fine. Okay, let's run that. So the challenge now is going through the application, running things, and making sure. Actually, no. So the integration events for the view. There is something to be said there in that I could now say on the view side of things, right, that planning items could have last updated by, right? So I could modify this and do last updated by. That's going to be a challenge unto itself because there's tests, there's behaviors, there's all sorts of stuff around that. There's there's more to do than just say, okay, whack a column on there, right? But that does give a useful feature for the view. The view can now pull that and say, oh, the source came through, it updated, therefore whoever did it is the person who last updated it. So we know who last updated this planning item. That's a visual aspect. I don't need to track that in the planning necessarily. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, my brain's drifting to the fact that I do update last updated it automatically, but I wouldn't have the context of who was doing the request. Because again, I'm not bleeding HTTP context down to my database layer. So I'd have to figure out a way of passing that anyway. Yes. And that's a singleton, so it doesn't really matter. It has no context. So how does this affect things? Well, now I know. Now I'm starting to get better at who, right? Um, I need to build up the features for. I'm kind of torn. Do I make it? I think I make it a stream to begin with. So I think I start with sending everybody the list of events. So rather than start with restrictions, I make it an open feed. And the way I'm contemplating doing this, I'm not worried about email right this second, right? So and it's funny because Mojo sent me a video link to a strategy and factory pattern video, and in the video, it was Jono. Um, he basically said it was describing notifications channels, email, SMS, etc., and creating composable notification channels from that. And I'm like, well, that's actually kind of similar to what I want to do. Um, so changes is going to publish its changes. Right now, I'm thinking communications needs to pick up those changes, and this is why I'm still kind of sat on the edge as far as is there a notifications piece? But then what would notifications serve other than being an API for figuring out what people care about and then publishing the communications? So it's not really notifications, it's kind of communication management, in which case it's an aspect of communications. So why bother splitting that out in any way, shape, or form? What complexity? What what value does that have? What value does that have to me. Um, yeah, it's getting kind of challenging. Um, as far as the general design goes. Sorry, I'm drifting on the way I'm thinking about things right this second. I apologize because again, changes is a calculated piece. Um, monitoring is going to be another component. And basically, what that's going to do is, I want that way, right? Monitoring is going to be responsible for figuring out, kind of watching things, right? Has this thing changed in X amount of time? So again, maybe communications is kind of a big, if I'm being honest, it's kind of a massive piece because um, what I'm considering here is the fact that monitoring is per user, essentially, because you're going to say, okay, if a review date is within a week, I want to notify, right? If a review date is within, and that's actually not that. Well, no, that is that. Tenant management. This is a right now. It's a service bus communication because it's user onboarding. It goes to email. Um, this would be a service bus connection as well, right? What I'm failing to show here is that I think that several of these things now have API aspects. So monitoring has an API, communications has an API, changes doesn't have an API, view obviously is a GraphQL API. Um, but I think configuring monitoring, hey, I care about whatever. It means that all the information, right? And I'm right now planning is the biggest component of what I'm doing, right? Tenant management doesn't have necessarily anything worth, but there could be Kafka events that go to here, right? Projects change names, etc. That could go to monitoring. I don't know why that would be, but there's things. So when I get to stories, etc., these all have arrows going to changes to monitoring to view because Kafka is publishing events, right? So it's not like this is the final version. It's more this is a version. Hi, important guy. How you doing? Such impeccable timing. Sorry, I missed the end of your stream last night. I was lurking, so I do apologize. I've done zero shout outs because it's not been uh very active chat with newcomers today. So I do apologize about that. I really should spend some time working on my other projects. Good, terrible though. Is it the rainy period for you now? Or is it just terrible weather for a day? August. Yeah, probably. Rainy period, yeah. I know we had to time our visits around certain things. That was one of them. So overall, today has not been the best from a stream perspective, but it has been the best from a solving the problems that are going forward, right? So our tests should pass. Still got some strengthening to do there. We do have all 270 tests across all these projects seems very light. I should probably be on double those number of tests by now. So tomorrow, what does tomorrow look like? So tomorrow looks like getting the user context through changes. It looks like tracking last updated by as a user on an entity. Maybe that'll be done before tomorrow because off stream after work, right? I'll probably do quite a bit. Um, at that point, once changes knows who's making a change, I think I basically work towards producing the feed. And like I said earlier on, right, what I'm thinking here is that there's kind of an inbox, and I push all notifications to the inbox. Do I push notifications or do I push? This is where I get into the blend of do I have communications versus notifications, where notifications is kind of, or subscriptions essentially, right? What do I care about, right? Because ultimately I'm going to narrow that down, but I'm not quite sure how. Now, there is a difference in how I produce a notification, in that if it's a push notification, the user should get notified via a little flag, and still an inbox notification, right? So there's messages in your inbox, context as well. That's gonna come into this as to how I build that. So maybe communications does have the inbox. I keep going back and forth. Communications has the inbox, but the notification system sits there and calculates what it is that it's notifying and what it should do. So responsibility, ownership, these are going to be challenges that I have to figure out. But by the end of this 2-week period, say, what I expect to see is when I log into the application as a user, right, I should be able to see a notification that something has changed. I should be able to see when something has been assigned to me. I should be able to see when a review date has gone past due. I should be able to see all manner of other things. When a review date changes, I should be able to subscribe to these things and come up with some kind of format for adding in that ability to take context from the changes and identify who. So, yeah. But unfortunately, that is the end of the time today. If you're interested in knowing more, if you would like to ask more questions, if you ever want to see this off stream, we have started obviously getting together in Discord sometimes, which has been nice. But I'm happy to talk about this stuff, even just in Discord chat. So there is a Discord linked below the stream. So yeah, that's So yeah, please. No, stream another 2 hours. Unfortunately, I can't. I got a job, and I have to work, and I do not want to be. You know what? How do you know what I'm firing? Well, good morning, defaults. I'm sorry you're coming right at the end. I will take you. I will take you somewhere good. I promise. So let's um give a shout out first. One line's been quiet today, but one line stream. If you like this sort of stuff, if you like app development, etc., like design and talking about the software and getting the software written, also big Blazor developer. So unlike me, who's using Angular, one line is very worth a check out. And, I would highly advise giving him a follow. But right now, we're going to go and raid onto Andreas, who's doing Blazor and Tailwind and all the fun things in the UI. So yeah, I will be back tomorrow. We'll continue this challenge of tackling this user context thing, and maybe put some more thought to how communications and notifications differ and who owns what and where. So yeah, take care all. Have a great rest of your day. If I do not see you around on Twitch, thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye all. I need a stream deck.